What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 2 of We Got Next with Anthony Fava. I'm your host, Anthony Fava, and today we have an extra special guest here for our second episode. Just a quick intro for her. She was born and raised in Ajax, Ontario, but now resides in Toronto, where she works to explore her passions of both dance and photography. Her brand of photography is extremely authentic and combines elements of many disciplines, including dance. And speaking of dance, she will also be performing in a split bill of 2 dance pieces at the Hamilton Fringe Festival from July 20th to the 31st, and will also be performing in Edinburgh in August. She will also, once again, be premiering her film, O Air Do Ben, I hope I pronounced that correctly, commissioned by Guelph Dance. So please, welcome to We Got Next, the queen of the camera lens and the dance floor, Audrianna Martin Del Campo.
Hello, the queen of the camera lens and the dance floor. What an introduction. Thank you so much for that, Anthony. And lovely to be here. Happy to be chatting with you on this podcast.
Yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to getting into it. Obviously, last week we had a friend of yours, Jack Copeland, on, talk to him about acting. So I'm excited this week to get into some photography and dance, a topic that I am not too familiar with, but I'm going to try my best to keep up with you here.
Of course.
So I'm just going to get into the first question here, which is just a quick background about yourself, your childhood, upbringing, what really inspired you to get into dance and photography?
Of course. Okay, so when I was younger, I think with like many kids where it's like, okay, we're going to put you in a few different extracurriculars and sports and, get you active in a community and see like what you vibe with. And I think from as a kid, I was very like, theatrical, singing and dancing, acting, all of that stuff. So it was actually a friend in like I think maybe daycare or kindergarten that I was in. And it was like bring a friend to dance kind of day. And so that was my first time in the studio. And I just remember loving it and feeling so safe and at home. So I asked my mom to like enroll me in dance the following year. So I've been dancing, I think, since I was maybe 6 or 7 years old. And then the kind of natural progression, maybe in the dance world, especially in like North America, is that a lot of times kids go to a competition studio. So maybe you start off recreationally, but if you get more serious about things, you learn routines and then you get to travel during the kind of spring season to go compete. And then that can get a little bit more intensive and the stakes are a bit higher like as you get older. But essentially that was my like lead way into dance. Started off at a competitive studio and then continued on through that up until I got older and realized that this is something that I really enjoy doing and would love to make a career out of. And then that's the moment you go into post-secondary, find your way, figure things out into the professional world. But it actually is how I got into photography as well, because my dad has some experience in the sense that he does like videography and photography for some dance competitions. After we started getting involved, he just had a passion for photography and would be like taking our photos while we were on stage. People were like, oh, you're pretty good at this. He's like, I've watched enough to see like when they're preparing for a jump or when they're about to do some sort of move. So we had a little bit of a good eye for that. So I remember when I was older, the nationals we'd go to compete at in New York, they needed like a headshot of all the competing best dancers. And I remember thinking, Dad, I need to get like a new photo of myself instead of just taking like a selfie on my, like the first version of an iPhone. And he was like, well, where my camera equipment is. Like, there's enough stuff on the internet. If you want to learn about this, then this is your time to do that. So it was myself able to use my dad's camera equipment to kind of figure things out in my backyard of getting a tripod set up and taking my first ever like portrait. But I remember loving learning how the cameras work, how photography works. And then that kind of kicked off a passion, which I studied in high school and post-secondary as well. So they kind of brought the both worlds together, but that was like my introduction to both of those things.
That's really cool because you wouldn't expect maybe like dance and photography to go hand in hand like that, but it seems like they almost combined in a sense for you.
Exactly. It was a very natural kind of intertwining between the two. Yeah.
And I guess with that, with your upbringing, having photography and dance there, are there aspects of those earlier years of dance and photography from your upbringing that you still kind of get inspired by today, or you still carry into your work today?
I would say definitely. I remember I always try to keep a lot in both aspects and how they overlay one another, because even now I primarily work with a lot of the people that I shoot with are dancers. Like I do a lot of dance photography, being a dancer myself, knowing the craft and knowing how to capture people in their best light in that way. But in both of those things, and just remember how when it's something so new and exciting and how like fueled you feel by it. I will never forget being in that backyard, figuring out the camera, trying to get the picture, checking my full face is in frame, like just how happy I was to figure that out. So I always try to keep that little girl who was so excited to be like doing this in both dance, being on stage, performing, the community around it, and just being so excited to capture things that I am interested in through my eyes. I really try to always implement and bring that forward with me now every time I'm, walking into whatever artistic medium I'm stepping foot through that day.
Yeah, and I guess just kind of continuing with that, I think you touched on it a bit, but was there a moment during your upbringing or just any time where it kind of clicked that maybe dance and photography were things that you could pursue beyond just like a hobby or just doing it competitively as a kid?
Um, Definitely. I think dance came first. Photography came a little bit later. It had always just been like more of a passion, but I think because I was in such a competitive and intensive, almost like conservatory environment, I didn't really have time to put my focuses elsewhere. So with dance, when I decided that I wanted to get very serious about it, I went to a more kind of intensive studio that I knew would give me the proper foundations and training to get where I needed to be. And I think so that was maybe grade 10 or 11 that I had made that realization of this is something that I want to get serious about. I am interested in pursuing. Um, so yeah, that was a little bit younger to try to like lay the framework for when you're older and then be prepared for whatever extracurricular you wanted to step into. And then coming out of that, working like professionally, which is, yeah, all, I think in any career or any way, that kind of progression. But photography came later. Like as I was dancing and working and living in all of these places, I always had my camera with me, and people would just be like, oh, I need to go to an audition, can you take a quick headshot? Or hey, would you mind? And I would offer, be like, this is a beautiful space we're in, can I like take some photos? And it was just more for my own like creative interests. But then maybe a little, it was kind of the pandemic that was a shift for me in terms of like, oh, I've just been doing this so long for myself. And a lot of people are naturally feeling drawn to what I'm sharing, and interested in the way in which I'm choosing to capture things. So maybe I can start putting out there a little bit more that I this is something that I'm interested in and taking on doing. And it kind of just, I will say that's one very beautiful thing for me that came out of the pandemic, is that switch when things were more, shut down. I'm sure we might talk on that later, but how that allowed me for the photography career to flourish and switch gears a little bit into that way. So I think maybe 2020 in photography is when I realized, oh, this is something that I can really push and pursue if I'm interested in doing so, which I was.
So, like going off photography, and obviously you are a dancer, as we touched on. Do you
Yeah.
find a lot of intersection between the two mediums? Like, how were how are the dance and photography fields during the pandemic versus now, and then also like how have they kind of intertwined in your life?
Yeah, for me, it's interesting. I mean, going off like basis of COVID, I'm sure like many performing artists or just the arts sector in general, like really struggled. We weren't having any live shows. Like it was a very much a difficult time, I would say, for many artists. I know I can relate. A lot of my peers are in the that field, but so that allowed the photography to kind of like take the front seat a little, take the driver's seat a little bit. And I was doing a lot of food styling, recipe development, that kind of photography as well, because that's just another issue. It all just kind of birthed from passions, which I know that it's like a cliche of like find what you love and you'll never like work a day in your life, which is kind of give or take, but it's true. When you just are really passionate about something, it's just it doesn't feel like work, and you just feel so blessed that you're able to support yourself during a difficult time doing this. They just send you the in that sense, they just send you the products and you're doing it in your own home studio, so you're not risking, contact with anybody during that more intensive time. But then coming out of it, I would say it's been a bit difficult because pre-pandemic I didn't consider myself or identify as a photographer, just more of a dancer. And then coming out of that, I was, because had been working so much in photography, and dance obviously hadn't been happening that much, or being in the studio or creative processes. So it has been a little bit interesting in 2021, 2022, even still so now, to find that kind of balance between the two. Being a freelance dancer in Toronto, like I'm not weekly committed to being in a studio all the time. So projects, come and go all the time. So it's nice in the sense that I would say that I'm able to kind of make my own hours. I'm able to kind of craft my own schedule with photography. So anytime that right now, for example, going into a intensive like 2 week kind of like show run, I won't be doing much in the photography realm. But then once maybe that project ends and I see that I have a bit of a space, that's where I can maybe see if I can take on more things in that way. In terms, just one more thing on that topic, in terms of the intersectionality maybe between the two, I find it for myself to be a really beautiful contrast, because where I'm at right now in the sense of working in a dance space, I'm very lucky that I've been able to work with so many wonderful peers and emerging choreographers, that it's a very like collaborative nature. But I'm still very much happy to be and in spaces where it's like you are contributing, but you are being a vessel in your way for someone else's vision. Like you are helping to bring something to life, and you find your own things within that. But I'm happy to kind of let someone take the reins and help assist the work in that way. And then for photography, although I enjoy it to be collaborative as well, it's the driving force is me. It's coming from how I am choosing to view things through the lens. I have more total control. So I like that I have that contrast within like my artistic practices, that one is more being available for someone else, and the other one is like, okay, this is me and my vision, and bringing that to life while maybe working with someone else in that sense. If that helped answered your question.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, it's kind of cool how you're saying like the dance, you're bringing someone else's vision to life, but then the photography, it's like you really get to create that thing on your own and like make your own
Ex-
art.
for sure, yeah.
Obviously, with dance, you do get some sort of influence on it, putting your own spin on the routines and whatnot. But yeah, at the end of the day, it is someone else's choreography that you are doing. So I definitely do get what you're saying there. And I did want to kind of move more towards the dance side of things, just for a bit
Yeah,
here. And I
yeah.
just wanted to know, in your opinion, like what makes dance such a special art form, and like what are the keys to conveying a story or a message through just movement, essentially, and facial expression?
Interesting. Great question. Thank you for asking that. I would say for myself, obviously being a bit biased, since like that is what I've trained in, but I'm very fortunate that like majority of my closest friends are more working within clown and theater. So it's nice to have be able to like feed off both or get more information, or it brings so much to my practice. I think the more like enriched you are with like life and other art forms. Um, but I really love that sometimes, although I'm very big on communication, and I think this is where the same thing goes with both photography and dance, like bringing that back in a little bit, is that you're able to convey so much, and in more of like a sensation feeling way, without the needs for words to be there. Um, so I find that to be very interesting, because sometimes I feel like words are like limiting, like you can't fully express the full depth of what you're trying to say, what you're trying to convey, or what emotion may be moving through you, depending on like what the piece or what that requires of you. And dance is such like a really beautiful way, or when you're watching a piece, or when you yourself or are in it doing the work, it's so liberating in a way to be able to channel that and really like have that be a visceral reaction through your body, and feel those emotions, or feel that story, or feel that connection with your partner or the people on stage so deeply, without the need for words to have that be read, if that comes across. Yeah.
Hmm. And one thing I've always wondered, just because I did a lot of theater acting in high school and university,
Yeah.
And obviously improvisation is a big thing when you forget lines, that sort of thing, anything like that. I was just wondering in dance specifically, how does are you ever having to like do a lot of improv if you say forget a step or something, or just have you ever forgotten like part of the routine you've really had to improvise it and make it look good?
I have, like, when you're younger and like when we're going more back to like that competition field, they really drill in like you clean this routine for a lot of months. You're like you get it all ready for stage. You got the costumes, the makeup, the lights, the hair, and you're working as a team because you want to do your best. You want to win the awards and stuff like that. There have definitely been times teachers have always said, like, I've been fortunate enough that I've never kind of blanked or like forgotten anything. More so, it's been times where if you're doing something with a partner or like maybe a lift is meant to happen but it doesn't happen, and you have to like figure that out together and how you can keep the show going. But usually like they run such a tight ship that you can kind of it well enough that it's like I can usually pick up on the next four counts and be back. But in terms of the improvisation aspect that you were saying, as we've gotten older, or even what the works that I'll be doing now at the Hamilton Fringe, a lot of the narrative is there and there is a structure in place, but a lot of the work that we're doing is actually just task based. So we do have to rely on each other a lot because no two nights are going to look the same. Like we do bring a lot of ourselves and our like kind of the connection and the relationship we built during this process to trust each other to have these moments of improvisation. But I think that also comes from the trust in the choreographer, the story, and the people that is carrying this piece with you.
Oh, okay, okay. And
Yeah.
just jumping from that, you told me you studied and worked as a dancer in Italy pre-pandemic. I'm super jealous of that. Italy's like a dream destination of mine. I got a lot of Italian family, so I've always wanted to go, but haven't gotten to yet. So I just want to know what that was like studying and working as a dancer in Italy.
Yeah, for sure. First of all, you got to go. You got to get over there and visit. It's absolutely beautiful. I also haven't been back in a while. I haven't been back kind of post COVID, but yeah, it's a really amazing place, and it was a very like really wonderful transformative time in my life. I had kind of been at a place where I had just been on in a little bit of burnout from how intensive dance had been in my life, and I knew that it was always going to be a part of my life, but I kind of was like wanting to see if there was other options out there for me. So I had taken a little bit of a break to go switch gears a little bit. I did my like yoga teacher training because I'm like I would love to, it helped me so much when I was dancing and having a kind of outlet in that way of still like moving and connecting, body, breath, spirit together. And maybe I can go and teach this at dance studios because that happened to me and I would love to get back. But anyways, after that time, I had kind of been at a crossroads a little bit, and I had taken a workshop that was based in this kind of technique of a choreographer that I really admired. And one of the people that was leading this workshop, they're based somewhere in Europe, but they were telling me that they run this training program out in Italy that's like intensive for it's like under 2 years. And if I was, because I was explaining kind of a little bit of what I was just saying to you, and he told me about it. He said that I could send over my stuff and they would love to have me. And I was kind of at this point in my life where, I mean, thankfully I have very supportive parents as well to, allow me to go do this. But I just kind of took that leap and I was like, yeah, I would love to go experience what this scene or what this culture and what the influences are over there in Italy. So that was a really wonderful time. I had trained there. It was based in Bologna, which is fairly central in terms of the geography of Italy. And fortunately enough, being there, I was exposed to a lot of opportunities I wouldn't have found otherwise because either the calls were out in basically the language barrier. I would say like there was a lot of things being posted for auditions or this or that was on Italian dance websites. So having peers that were from Italy and able to be like, oh, there's an audition next week. We're all going to go. We can help you fill out the application. We can help you do this. And if we all get accepted, we'll go together. So it was things like that that had led me from there to go move a bit more south in Sicily, do like a junior company there for a few months. And then through word of mouth, one of my teachers had recommended another thing in Venice, then was able to go do that part of the Venice Biennale, which happens like during the span of, I think it kicks off in May all the way up to the film festival in September. And then it was just kind of opportunities like that that kind of strung along in a freelance way, grateful to the people in the community that I had cultivated. Um, but it was super, super interesting. Despite that language barrier, it was interesting to see, to be exposed. Also, it was like an international program too, but to be exposed to so many different approaches coming into movement because it was felt like I was just so sheltered in this little um, North American kind of way of how things were done. So that was super cool, and that really like opened my eyes up to a whole new way of what dance can be, and it helped me kind of release the expectations so much of like the technical point of it. I found that my teachers in Italy were really coming from a place of that sensation, that feeling of this is what is driving you. It's coming from here, like as opposed to how it looks externally. It's how it's feeling and how it's coming from inside of you that is guiding the movement. So that really helped shape and transform things. And then, I mean, unfortunately, COVID had happened. And also, it was just a bit difficult with the work visa situation because I don't have like a European passport. So things kind of aligned perfectly because I'm happy to be in Toronto and establishing connections there. But I'm wondering if one day life will bring me back over there once again because I would love to continue to re-meet up with old peers and friends and things like that. But there's also just a really wonderful arts culture that I found in Europe in general, but Italy specifically, since that's where I always was ending up.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on, the language barrier not really being a huge factor while you were there. And I think it's really cool how, if you think about it, dance and photography are kind of one of the only two art forms that, language really isn't that important to understanding the stories and, the images that are being shown.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I made this connection now just within talking to you when you had asked me between the two. I'm like, yeah, both of these are technically like without sound, like without narrative or text in that way, but um they both can like evoke things in a different way. So cool, cool.
Yeah, and I wanted to jump more to your photography now. Now that we've
Yeah.
discussed a lot about your dance, I wanted you to describe to me your brand of photography. I kind of touched on in the intro for you how it's very authentic, is what I kind of saw, and how it combines a lot of the human body with nature elements, which I found was really cool. So I was just wondering how you would describe your brand of photography. And I also, after that, once we finish that part, I wanted to know kind of how others can build their own brand or style that's like unique to their own, unique to themselves.
Gotcha.
Sorry.
Got you. Well, thank you so much for those kind words. I really appreciate it. And I feel like you are able to see, I guess, what I'm trying to convey in that way. I think that naturally just being a dancer and having that kind of, I don't even want to say awareness, but that I guess availability and understanding of the body. I was very interested in kind of seeing these shapes in a kind of natural space, going back to, I guess, upbringing. Very fortunate, like was born and raised and parents are based in Ajax. So we're in a place where there's a lot of really beautiful and wonderful natural elements, like we're close to the lake, forests, things like that. That's always been a very huge integral role in my life. So I loved kind of seeing um, how the human body can just influence, disrupt, or kind of enhance the space, this beauty and this natural like gorgeousness that's already there, provided by nature. So yeah, I kind of like to find either those contrasts or those blends between the two. Like working outside amongst a natural environment is my favorite way to work, I would say, but that has, I would say, evolved in a way. But it's my personal brand. I think I just go based on what I am very interested in seeing, or like the lens in which I view the world. So I very much like things that are a bit more moody, atmospheric. Yeah, like very, I don't want to say dark in that sense, but very kind of like contrasted, spooky even sometimes photography. I would say I just like using a lot of kind of more, I'm really inspired by like just like surrealism as well, so trying to fit in a little bit of elements of that as well. So that's also why it's very beautiful when I do get the chance to work with dancers or like peers, because they have so much agency and freedom over their body, and sometimes you just allow them to exist in this space and do their own thing, and you're capturing, maybe it's even like an in-between moment that they wouldn't necessarily have posed themselves, but it creates these like super interesting shapes that maybe it's going in the same direction that like the tree is blowing or whatever it may be, and already it's like that picture is giving so much more that was created in that instant moment that I couldn't have ever composed in my wildest dreams myself to create. So I find that really interesting to bring into that improv aspect of kind of letting the space inform, or letting the whoever's in front of the lens also just make something beautiful in that moment. And then in terms of like discovering or finding your own brand, I really think it's just honing into what your interests are. Or like when some photos that I would take, it would be for my own like selfish desire of like, I wish I could, like, I'm not a good painter or sculptor or anything else in that aesthetic nature of like, but I have this thing in my head that I want to see brought forth. And it's like, if you feel like there's something that you would like to see and it's not out there, that's for you to find a way to like make that happen for you, whatever that may be. And you don't even have to have a extremely, our phones are so advanced these days, like in terms of like a photography lens, but to bring that forth. So I would say just really whatever ignites your soul, whatever you really feel inspired by, like allow that to lead, let that follow, and then things will start to reveal themselves to you. And you don't have to get so stuck even too on labeling in the beginning of what your brand is. Try a few things out, because we're constantly shape shifting, adapting, evolving. So that can move with you as well. But I think if you're staying true to yourself and those ideas that you're feeling, those inspirations, everything else will come on its own.
And you kind of touched while you were talking about some things that uh, compose your style, I guess. And you mentioned the word spooky, and I definitely got that vibe. Like right now, I'm looking at essentially your head growing out of the ground with some mushrooms around you and grass and things like that. I've seen pictures where like you're engulfed in spiders' webs, you have spiders on your face, things like that. What inspires you to make like such, I don't even know how to describe them, like photos like these? Like these are really cool to look at, and it's just a brand of photography I've never really gotten to see before.
Gotcha. Well, thank you so much. Both those photos, that when I was thinking spooky, like both of those kind of came in my head as I was trying to think, like referencing back to like the ones I had shared on my social media. But yeah, I think it's just like for me, like whenever I'm taking a photograph, and a lot of times during the pandemic when we weren't able to meet in person, I was taking a lot of self portraits. Like a lot of what I have shared on my Instagram, it's like they are self portraits because it gave me a chance to, well, know myself better and learn the camera and have no pressure or expectation on, obviously if you're shooting with somebody, to be mindful of time, mindful of how the other person is, but I could go out for hours to just play and experiment in that way. um, so for me, it's a mixture of going in with some sort of inkling of an idea or inspiration. Some photos are a little bit more planned, I would say, in that way of like, oh, I have like this image has come really strongly in my head. For example, this like mushroom growing out of the grass one. But some, it's just like if you give yourself that freedom to be, like I was saying a little bit earlier, like inspired by what's around you and even the emotional state or how you feel showing up on that day, that'll already like can maybe influence things differently than you might have thought. um yeah, so I think that it's just like, well, like for example, going back to like the spider web was around like a Halloween time. The mushroom one was the idea of doing a birthday self portrait, and just the idea of like um reframing, I would say maybe it was kind of like uh, a nod to like death in a way, or the idea that I'm very interested by mycology. And I was at that time, I was reading a really interesting book regarding mycology. So that naturally was like inspiring my thoughts and being so interested in what was around the area that I was in at that time. And then it was just kind of a little bit of a nod of, we consume mushrooms when we're alive. And then when our bodies are kind of decaying and decomposing like the mushrooms, then in turn, like it's just a constant cycle. So that was a little bit of a nod to you're getting a year older, you're 1 year closer to this state kind of thing, and kind of bringing in that spooky surreal element. But I think it's just really leading with like that intention, but also giving yourself a little bit of freedom to see what kind of arises on that day. And that always shifts things. I've never thought of an idea and then taken it and it looks exactly like that verbatim. Something always shifts, but I think it's that initial thing. And then looking at your reference versus what you've created and seeing the similarities, but also noticing your own little spice that you've added into it.
Okay. And you kind of touched on your inspiration for a lot of these photos. So I was more wondering now, um, thinking of new photo ideas, do you have any strategies that you usually use for those listening just to kind of figure out how they can get inspiration for photos? Like, are there any specific strategies you use, or is it more so you just see things in the environment and it just kind of clicks in your head?
Um, hmm. For me, it always will start with um any sort of feeling, because I really do think at the end of the day, it's like, what are you looking to say with this photograph? And it's for you to know that, not how will it be received. It's like, what are you looking to put out in that way? What is so inside of you that feels the need to come out or manifest in that way, I would say. And then I think there's so many ways into that, whether it's like some sort of emotional state. You may have been inspired by a film. There's a piece of music you're really listening to that's making you feel some sort of way, and you're seeing it, and it's maybe visually you're seeing it in your head. What's that bringing forth? And oh, I know this place by my house that reminds me of this song, and I would love to get these flowers with this. Whatever it may be, I think there's a lot of ways into kind of bringing forth, like going out and creating in that way. But I think it's for you, um, looking at yourself and being like, what first and foremost, like, yeah, what am I saying within this? Because there's so much that you have the freedom to do within the photography. Like, that's one thing I like about it, film as well, is like you're really getting to show someone your point of view. You can have, and I always thought this would be a cool reality project runway-esque, but you have photographers, and if you put them all in the same room with the same one model, give them 10 minutes each, they're all going to come up with 10 incredibly different photographs, because it's everyone's very different artistic lens or very just different point of view, and that's very unique to you. So I think it's just honing in on, what am I trying to say, what am I wanting to say, and then let everything else take care of itself.
That does sound like a really cool show idea. I think it'd be really cool to see what
Yeah,
each person would do with just like, what seems like the same setup, but could be totally different photos and meanings behind them.
exactly. If anyone listening who's pitching show ideas, there you go.
And I guess going off of that, then, people can also have different, they can look at a photo and think of a totally different meaning than maybe what you intended for the photo. And I was just wondering, have you had situations like that where someone is like, oh, this photo was so great, like I really got this from it, and it's just totally different from what your intentions were for the photo, maybe?
Yeah, honestly, that happens a lot. Like, actually, not in a way that's so night and day. Like, maybe for me, I'm like, this was like a more like sad moment, or let's just say, and then someone's like, oh, this reminded me of sunshine and rainbows, like just to show a contrast here. But it's usually like, I find it interesting, like what when I share something, like what people resonate with. Like, sometimes I'll take something and I'll be like happy with how it turned out or satisfied with it, but um I'm in my heart, I'm like, oh, this isn't like something that I'm like very, very connected with. Like, I'm so happy with how it turned out, but I'm like, yep, I'm growing, I'm learning, I would love to share this, like, because of XYZ. And then maybe that's the one that so many people are like, I love this, or this is a like, I really love what the lighting in this or that. And it's very interesting to see, and I guess like get that feedback. I always love when it's different from what I intended it to be. But I mean, one of my favorite like creators, his name's David Lynch, more in like the movie director realm, but he always says, like, similar to what I was saying with the 10 people in the same room, is like, uh, you can have a screening of 20 people watching a film, and every single person is going to see and interpret that film slightly different. And there's like a beauty in that, knowing that the vision that I saw, maybe, or the thing that brought me to there is going to be so different from every other person that sees it. So I welcome the like contrast and the difference. It's always interesting when it's a little bit different than what you were intending to convey.
Yeah, and I think with your dance background, you're able to really uniquely convey stuff through especially the body movement in your photos. So I was just kind of wondering, like, how important do you think that your dance background has been like influencing your photography? I know we touched on it briefly, but I kind of wanted to expand on it a bit more.
Yeah, actually, I didn't realize how helpful it has been, um, in the sense that I have just been very fortunate that, or when I was first getting started, even, or having my camera with me in Italy to just work with my peers, like, you just tell them, like, they know themselves so well in that way, that it's just, you just give them a little direction or task, and or a tiny little tweak of like, okay, like chin up, or lift that arm, drop the wrist or something, and they know so well, they know how to do that for you to bring that idea to life. But then when I started working with non dancers, I do work a lot with people that don't have a very long movement history training. Um, it's really interesting to use in a kind of like directorial choreography kind of way, to try to guide people through in a way that feels natural to them. And it's because I don't want to say like, okay, lift your arms up, drop your hip, do this, and then they look awkward, because that's not something that their body it, shape that they've done before feels comfortable to them. Because when you see those pictures where people look like a bit too posed, or those classic like high school ones we used to get where you're tilting your head all the way or something. So it's ways of kind of, which I find, where I brought in the choreography aspect of it. It's like giving people tasks for them to feel at ease with, and still bring movement in, so people aren't just kind of static and standing there, because being in front of a camera can be very scary and it's very vulnerable. So you want to make sure that people feel comfortable in that way, and trying to use my movement language and background to give people tools where it's like, I'm going to tell you something, but this is how you interpret it, how you want, whether it's like pretending to just kind of move your arms, swaying a little bit, almost as if you're like running through blades of grass. And that'll look different for different people, but it's that impulse that they do that will look most natural on them. And that's where those great shots come out, because it's them being authentic versus thinking too much in their head or feeling very stiff and posed. So it's been a very great blessing to be able to bring those kind of movement skills and language to help people that don't have that background, or come to me and say, I don't know what I'm going to do. I actually like, I'm not very good at posing. You're going to have to help me. I'm so bad. And then within a few minutes, see that confidence come through, seeing them trust themselves, and then being able to go with that. And then they look at the pictures and think, oh my gosh, I never thought that I looked like that in that way, or that I could do that. So that's always very rewarding. And I'm grateful that that's something that I'm able to help cultivate when I'm doing a shoot with someone.
Yeah, and do you think that the dance choreography background could even be helpful to, say, an actor? Because I know one big thing in acting is when your character's not talking or not really part of the scene, but you're still on stage, just figuring out how to do that movement while you're not the main focus. Do you think that even dance choreography can help with that? I know you touched on it with photos, but more in an acting sense.
1000%, 1000%. And like I had said, my closest friends, my like inner circle, majority of them are all working actors in different realms of what that is in the theater world. So being able to have that synergy to like feed off of each other, because I think it goes both ways in that sense, specifically relating to like theater and actors, stuff like that. But there's so much that dancers can really learn and take away from actors, and I think it's also vice versa. I can always see when I'm watching a show who has a movement background and who doesn't. And I really think that as an actor, it can only, I can imagine in film as well, but maybe there's a bit more cheats in that, in terms of like angles are getting close. But on stage in a theater setting, I think it can only enhance your craft and your richness as an actor to have some movement training, because the way you're able to project, the way you're able to like deliver your line with conviction, even if you don't think that it's there, I can see when someone's more grounded, or they're dropping into their pelvis, or their shoulders are relaxed, or their chest is up. Like just these tiny little things that really make all the difference, and it really makes me more drawn to that actor because they're able to command the space better. And I think it's also just in sense of the idea of finding this kind of unspoken language in that way, like bringing in more movement based things to dancers, or sorry, to actors, in a way where the listening is heightened, instead of just, I know that this is the cue, my line is next. There's this kind of body language listening as well, which I think could be very helpful. But yeah, to answer your question, I think that it's super beneficial, and I really see it pay off on stage when somebody has any sort of movement training or background that they're bringing forth in their role.
That's really interesting, because I think you even hear about athletes saying the same thing who have dance backgrounds. Like, it just makes their footwork a lot better. It makes their movements on the court or the field or the ice or wherever like a lot easier. So yeah, I guess it crosses a lot of disciplines beyond just the arts too.
For sure, for sure. Yeah.
And so I wanted to, obviously, this podcast, as We Got Next, we're all about showcasing young people in creative industries. So this next question is more for the young Canadians, the young people listening who might be thinking of breaking into the industry of either dance or photography. So I just wanted to know what your biggest advice is for someone who's looking to take that next step and actually make a career out of these passions.
Okay. All right. I would say, and this is just from my own experience, the offering that I'm bringing forth here is that, because I find that, especially if you're listening here and you're based in Toronto, more so for like the dance realm, a lot of things is contract to contract based. There are the dance scene in Toronto. It's unfortunately, there's not necessarily a space where we have a lot of long-term established, like younger run, like contemporary companies where you have a salary, where you're going to be every single week. It's very hard in that way to be able to advocate for yourself, fight for yourself as a performer, believe in yourself in that way, because there's way more no's before you hear that yes. So I think it's just really believing in yourself, exposing yourself to as much as you can, building a community within wherever you're at, so that you can grow alongside emerging artists as well and lift each other up, support each other at shows, go take class in disciplines outside of your own. And I think it's just maybe getting clear, knowing that it can change as well, but getting clear on what it is that you're interested in and what you want. For example, for me, I before thought when I was younger that maybe like, oh, I wanted to dance in XYZ company. Like this was something I wanted to do. And as I got older, it's not that like faded in a way, but my priorities kind of rearranged, and I realized, oh, I'm actually more interested in this. I'm actually more interested in this. So I think it's stripping away although having goals is super important, and having like, if you have a dream choreographer, or a dream this that you want to achieve, of course, like set your eye on the prize and go for it, but also maybe release a little bit of the boundaries and the binaries around like a label. And if it's like you get to the nitty gritty of, okay, what aspects of being in a dance company would I like? Is it the sense of community? Is it the sense of getting to perform different works? Is it the sense of getting to tour and travel? And look at those kind of lists of traits that really inspire you, and then find a way, maybe in an individual way, to make it happen. Because all of those things could be possible, but maybe they're not all under one roof. So I would say just have an open mind, and the community around you is like going to be a very, very important thing as well, because you can only grow, support, and lift each other up in that way. And there's room for everybody to win.
That's some great advice right there. I did want to get to the work that you got going on though. You're going to be performing in the
Yes.
Hamilton Fringe Festival coming up, and also in Edinburgh in August, I believe you said. So I wanted to know,
Yes.
just tell us all about that. about both of
Yes,
those?
of course. Very excited about that. We open tomorrow for the Hamilton Fringe. Um, the two emerging choreographers, it's on Instagram as Fermented Dance. And it's a split bill between two creators, Rumi Jiraj and Eilish Shin Colhane. Um, and we're really excited. It's a very like unique cast, two different works. I'll be performing in both of them. Both have a lot of interesting through lines, I would say, in terms of um, the style or the worlds that have been created. But I think it's a very dynamic, diverse, and fun. It's a very fun show. So it's a little bit outside the GTA, but if you are in Hamilton or looking to check out the Hamilton Fringe, I would highly recommend coming and checking out a hour and a half evening of kind of absurdity, wildness, fun. It's interesting because we got the chance also to, there's a lot of like theatrical elements. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a traditional, we're just dancing, we're just bodies doing choreography in space. There's a lot of like our own selves, our own like agency and autonomy that we're bringing into the work. Our essence is very infused in both pieces, I think, which was really wonderful to work with both of them in that collaborative nature. So that's happening. We run till the 30th. Yeah, Fermented Dance on Instagram. You can also check it out through the Hamilton Fringe. And then I guess this is my summer of fringes because I'll also be performing in the Edinburgh Fringe in Scotland, which I'm extremely excited about. Scotland is one of my favorite places in the whole world. And every time I go and I stay with family, they're always like, I can't believe you're not here for the Fringe because I think it's like the biggest one in the world. Like they really, I was talking to a friend yesterday. She was there in May and they already were starting to like advertise for it and things were already getting busy and booked up. It's just such a wonderful time. So I hear and what I'm gathering so far, it's just buzzing with so many shows, so many acts, everybody there to see interesting, unique, cool things. So I'm very much looking excited. I'm very much excited to be performing there as well. This is for another piece that's to do with like climate activism and the environment. So that's really wonderful to be able to spread that message as well. And that's a trio, myself and two other wonderful women who are getting to go over there. So yeah, very much looking forward to that. It's this, never been involved in a fringe before, so excited to have like two different tastes of them. One more, I guess locally, Hamilton still, you know, in the greater realm of things, and then more internationally on such a larger scale because already from what I've seen in the buzz it's been gathering, it's going to be crazy, but super excited and looking forward to it.
And is there like a different feel for you performing like here at home in Canada versus like overseas in Europe?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing I think being in terms of, well, I this will be my first time performing in like an English speaking place that's abroad in that way. Maybe the biggest thing for me, I guess, is like knowing that in the audience you have a community of people or loved ones there versus like when I was performing in Italy a lot of the time, although parents or loved ones maybe come to see one or two of the shows, for the most part, it's like you don't know who's in the audience in that way. So maybe in just the sense of like knowing who's going to be there to see you perform. Thankfully, I have a lot of family in Scotland and they're going to come see some of the performances. So that will be really lovely. But in terms of the difference, I don't know. That's something that I'm very interested in exploring once I'm over there, just to see what the response will be and see what people take away. Because I've had the opportunity to perform this piece that's going to Edinburgh earlier this year. We did like a school tour to help raise awareness and activism on, you know, climate injustice and stuff like that. So that was already wonderful to get that immediate feedback from the teachers and the kids and see how it's been implemented. So to do that over in Scotland and we have talkbacks towards the end of the piece, and we bring in people like from local government or the community that are working in climate justice to like give feedback. So it's really wonderful I'm looking forward to seeing what the response will be over there because so far it's been great. So it's still a bit of an open-ended question for me in that sense of like how I'd respond, but a lot of it is that I'm very excited to see and observe and what the difference is going to be.
Awesome. Yeah, it's really cool how those worlds are kind of intersecting, you know, climate activism and dance. It's something that, you know, you might not expect, but no, that's a really cool combination there. And obviously something that's super important.
For sure. And that's where it comes back to the advice, I guess, that I was giving earlier, because the wonderful woman who has created this, her name's Emma Bartolomucci, this is something where it's like you wouldn't necessarily think maybe dance and climate activism, but these are two things that she's very passionate about. And she carved her own lane in order to make that work and make that come to life. So going back to that advice, or just like finding the things that really fuel you and, creating your own, forging your own path in that way.
Oh, that's awesome. And speaking of forging your own path, you have another very cool thing coming up. Your film, commissioned by Guelph Dance, is coming out soon. Oh, Air Doben. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, for sure, for sure. Yes, you nailed the pronunciation. It's a Hungarian word. Um, I was very, very grateful to. It was during the end of 2022, I believe. Apply for this commissioning grant through Guelph Dance, curated by the wonderful Aria Evans. Um, and it was very interesting too, in the sense of wearing multiple hats, that I have a very close friend of mine who they also had their idea accepted. So I was a dancer in their piece. Like I was dancer slash actress, I guess, a little bit in that way. So that was cool to be a part of their creation and then go to the little screening and see myself in that work, dancing and acting, and then also presenting my own film where I was directing, doing everything, operating the camera behind the scenes. So that's been a very enriching experience to be able to be involved in so many different ways. But yeah, the film is essentially, I do love photography so much. That is like the core of like what drove me into wanting to explore more on film. But it's like dance photography on film is so beautiful, but combining the worlds even more to bring dance on film where you're still able to generate your ideas. It is your own point of view, the landscape you want, the lighting and everything, but now it's just a moving picture in that way. And you can there's so much more in what you're able to convey and show and I guess evoke. So I was very lucky that through Guelph Dances, they're very much super supportive and very open for us to use this grant and this time for experimentation. They really encourage that. So I did it with my mom, actually, who is not a dancer at all. She did grow up like doing gymnastics and things like that, but she doesn't have any technical formal training. Um, but there's like a story that I really wanted to share, or her story that's very, very close to my and our family's hearts. And I really thought that she could, and she did, rise to the occasion of taking on this role. And watching it back, I had some friends, like, as they viewed it, be like, you maybe couldn't tell that she didn't ever have dance training. Like, she's able to move so fluidly and beautifully. And I think that's where, referencing back to earlier in the talk, where I'm very grateful and fortunate. I had my sister, who's a dancer as well, kind of come help me to movement direct, but use the language and the knowledge we know as dancers to help guide non-dancers to try to, bring out of them their own movement language that we all have within us, but maybe it just takes a little bit longer to try to access. So she absolutely killed it. She did an incredible job. We did a little screening for those involved earlier in June, and it was so emotional for me to see my work and to see her on stage in this way. And so each month, Guelph has been releasing the films through their YouTube channel. So it's just Guelph Dances if you search that up on YouTube. And I believe mine is premiering near the beginning of August. So that's when I'll be able to share it on my platforms and advertise for it. But then it'll be up online. So looking forward to having that come out. It was very much a labor of love and excited to see it out in the world and whatever response that will garner.
That must have been such a special experience, though, getting to share that with your family members too. Like, not just having like your first film, but having your family be part of it too must have been really special.
Yeah, for sure. It was like my sister was there, and I kind of wanted it that way because going back to the what are you trying to say? It's like I didn't just want to make a film of beautiful dance, although that would be very nice, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's like, what is the story that I'm trying to tell? And this felt like a story that we had all kind of talked about together, and this is something that we wanted to share. And kind of who better than in a collaborative family way, people that are so close and are going to treat this in such like a sacred way. So it was really nice too, because I knew that taking on the role of being like a DP for the first time, which is something that I had always wanted to do, being so visually obsessed or like lover of cinema, um, it was nice to do with people that you know so well. Um, because I would say maybe I was a little bit difficult to work at times of like, Mom, we're losing light. Come on, we got to get it together, kind of thing like that. But it didn't feel as daunting as taking on the task of like, okay, I've hired so many people that I'm familiar or unfamiliar with. I got to like manage all of these things because I was kind of doing a lot of the wearing multiple hats in this. So it was nice to do it with people that you trust a lot and who had the patience and understanding and could communicate very, very freely with. So my intro into it didn't feel as daunting. And now I'm just fueled to continue to create with more peers and then build up the comfortability of maybe going even further and someone that you don't know, but you feel like you wanted to connect with in whatever sense, working with them and having the proper tools and professionalism to make that happen. So it was such a wonderful experience for so many ways, but especially that was my first intro into creating like cinematic works.
And I was also just wondering one last thing on your film. How much did your photography background help you while making this? Like whether it's, figuring out what the best shot is, like what the best angles are, where the subjects should be, things like that.
I would say it helped immensely, but also like a little bit detrimental at times because you can cheat a lot of things in photography in the sense of like it's a static image in that way. Like I can get everything to work and then the hair blows and the 1 2 3 go and then there's it. It's a frozen in time moment. But in film it's constantly moving. I can't fix it in post as much in that way, or I can't like shift things as much. So it's like if I had to get the lighting correct, if I had to get the whole scene completely set up, I had to make sure that like everything was in it. Or yeah, I just like there was a lot more in that way of like attention to detail that I had to take care of. But I do think it helped in terms of the vision or knowing the like shots that I wanted to get. And that's where it was almost even more fun because like there's an opening shot of where my mom's kind of like draped and lying on this beautiful tree. And to see that as an image, it's really beautiful. And maybe that stirs up any sort of emotions or any sort of connections to what you're seeing. But then to have the option to like move that and then have that pan in slowly and then the wind is brushing her hair and then the leaves roll by, like all these things that you would miss if it was just a photo, like it really brings this world to life. So I would say it was for those reasons it was amazing, but also a little bit difficult in the sense of more things had to be working outside of the screen. It wasn't as you couldn't cheat things as easily, but it was worth it. It was worth it, I would say.
Interesting, interesting. Um, d- Through making this film, do you have a newfound love for filmmaking in general? Because I see on your Instagram you do have quite a few film-based posts rather than photography. So I was just wondering whether this could be a third passion now that you'll continue on for years.
Yes, it is. It is definitely like in 2020 when we had the time to chill out a little bit and maybe watch a little bit of movies, chill out. Um, that's like where even beyond that, but I think I got really honed in on 2019, 2020 of like loving films and seeing how, yeah, like I was saying earlier, like just like a bigger stepping stone to photography, bringing those visual interests, but in a way more deeper worlds. You can really, really, really create worlds and really share that point of view, drive that even more. Um, but there's one thing to be like, oh, I really love karate, I don't know, or something like I really love something. I love it so, so, so much. But then you've never stepped foot in a karate class. You just have this admiration from the outside. And then you're almost scared to do it because what if you get in and you realize actually doing it, it's not for you, or it's whatever it may be. So it's taking that jump of going and feeling like I was held in a safe enough space through the Guelph dances and my family around me as my like majority of my cast, let's say, to figure that out. And I knew very well going into it, I think I even had written in my journal that this was just like a leap into the unknown, and we'll see kind of what that brings out in me. And I think the second I decided to call action for the first time, it just really felt like so much aligned. I really felt like this deep belonging in my soul, in the sense of I really feel like this is something I want to continue doing. So that really lit the spark for me, and it's something that, yeah, in the future I'm definitely interested in continuing to explore, especially with the dance aspect. Like I could even bring those worlds together even more, like dance on film, as we're saying, something like that. But that's the route. I'm more like dance on film at the moment, I think, is what I'm more interested in, or more surreal, less text based work. But maybe that will come in the future if I find the right collaborators. Like I said, many wonderful theater friends around me. So that would be wonderful to work with them in that way. But as of now, yeah, the gears are turning, the spark is ignited, and the ball feels to begin to start rolling in that direction. Yeah.
I think that's a really beautiful message just to the people listening and like just hearing your story here. It's you haven't just done one thing, you've really incorporated all your different talents, especially in this movie, as we see, you're incorporating dance, film, and photography in a sense. So I just think that's a really cool message to send to people. It's like you don't just have to be good at one thing. You can really intertwine those things no matter how different they may seem.
100%. 100%. Exactly. They maybe mine feel like they live within a little bit of the same world, like dance, photography, film. Okay. But no matter how obscure you may think that the two or multiple things that you're interested in are, I promise you there's a way to have them be symbiotically relating to one another. So anybody out there listening or beyond, like there's a way to infuse everything you love, if you would like to, if that's something you're interested in doing, into creating your own really unique, beautiful thing that only you can. It's you're only the only one who can share that in that way. So yeah, anybody out there listening, go and go out there and create crazy hybrids of different passions melded together and see where that takes you.
I think that's an awesome bookend to that part of the conversation. Before we get into my favorite part of the show, the rapid fire 5 questions. So, are you ready for these 5 questions? They're not hard, I promise.
Okay, I'm ready. Let me sit up. Okay, game face on. Let's go.
All right. So, first one, biggest dance inspiration, whether that's a dancer you really looked up to, or maybe a specific dance routine you've seen that really inspired you.
Okay, biggest dance inspiration. The first one that's coming to the top of my head is Marie Chouinard, and she is a Montreal-based choreographer and creator, and I have had the chance to work with her when I was in Venice. I'm just so inspired by. She has this fairly recent piece that she was working on while I was there. It's called Radical Vitality, and she's just such a like. She really embodies who she is, and it comes across so strong in her work, and I really love how she works and what she's created. So I would say Marie Chouinard.
Oh, nice. Okay, and then question two, we're going to jump to photography. I hope you don't have any brand deals going on because I'm going to ask you your favorite brand of camera.
Oh, that is Canon. Canon, tried and true. We have a joke that like we see someone with a Nikon and we go like, "Oh, Nikon," like pretend to spit. But all cameras are wonderful, but Canon has been like OG day one, and yeah, I always tried and true for me. Canon, I would say.
And then third question, we're going to hop back to dance. What is your favorite dance style to perform?
Ooh, okay. I would say definitely contemporary ballet. That's where I feel my strengths and assets as a dancer, and what I feel most comfortable doing is in that realm of contemporary ballet. I would say combining kind of um, the choreography that I'm working with, but still being able to use and hone in on all those years you spent training, building your repertoire, building your technique, and utilizing your facility in that way. So I would say performing definitely, yeah, in that realm of contemporary ballet.
All right, and then we're going to stay on dance for question four. Favorite dance movie or dancing scene from a movie?
Oh my gosh. Okay. This one is hard. This one is hard. I'm going to say because it was my first one, and that is Black Swan. Black Swan. That is my. I recently rewatched it for the first time since it came out, and that was one of those very influential movies that completely shifted so much for me. And I love how spooky, mysterious, surreal it is while combining, doing a really wonderful job of combining this really story that we all know of the Swan Lake. So I would definitely say Darren Aronofsky's Black Swan is top for me.
Nice, nice. Where did the Step Up movies rank amongst that? Because I know those were really
Oh,
popular back in the day.
Step Up. I honestly, and I'm realizing now, like I have such a deep respect and appreciation for like hip hop, but it's just never like been on my radar. I think because I'm a kind of like lanky person, not to make excuses for myself, but I was always like, I'm not a hip hopper. Like that's not my thing. That was more my sister. So I like the movies. I had an appreciation, but I never like really clicked with me. But I had a friend recently rewatch them, and in a kind of campy way, I'd be interested in kind of revisiting those movies and like the Save the Last Dance or those from that kind of early 2000s dance fusion from interesting scenarios that bring people together. And yeah, I don't know. I'll definitely revisit them, but they were never like top of my radar, I would say.
Okay, okay. And for the final question, we're gonna go away from photography and dance, and I just want to know, what is your favorite food or favorite food spot?
Okay, favorite food is spot. You mean like within the city or like or
Anywhere.
mm, mm, mm.
Kind of broad, but you know.
No, that's okay. Favorite food, I would say is, I mean, this is more of like a cuisine as a whole. But I am half Mexican, so I am a little bit biased in that way. But I'm pretty sure I could probably eat tacos for every meal. They're just so versatile in what you can do with them. There's so many like melding of different flavors. You can get sweet, spicy, salty, like all of these things. They're so fresh. They remind you of summer and a good time. So I would say tacos. And then I don't know, nobody does them better than my family. I have to be biased in that. So food spot would be like at my dad's making the guacamole and the molcajete, the big giant stone thing at home in our backyard, I would say. But Kensington Market, I would like Seven Lives is a close second.
Awesome, man. I'm getting hungry just hearing about that guacamole and tacos. I'm not gonna lie. Well,
Very
Audrey,
good.
thank you so much for being here with me today. This has been a great conversation. I think a lot of people listening at home or wherever they're watching or listening from will be able to take a lot from this. So thank you so much for sitting down with me.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be your second guest on this amazing series, and it's wonderful getting to connect with you and chatting with you in this way. And you're a wonderful host. So thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to chat with you. And yeah, excited to continue to listen to the rest of these episodes as they come out.
Well, I'm looking forward to making them, and all of you listening or watching or wherever you're doing it from, you're the best for making it this far. Stay tuned for another
Yes.
episode next Friday. This will be released on Friday, so stay tuned for that as well. Yeah, just thank you for watching, and peace out as always.
Thank you and goodbye.